Star Wars Underworld. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's because I'm talking about something that does not exist. Technically, it kind of exists, but also not really. It's incomplete, you might say, and it will unfortunately never be completed. Star Wars Underworld was a concept which George Lucas began to develop in 2006 right after the completion of the prequel trilogy. It was a live-action Star Wars TV series which Lucas wanted to set during the 19 years between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, showing what was going on throughout the galaxy during the early years of the Empire's rule. Lucas envisioned it as an anthology series of sorts, unlike Star Wars The Clone Wars, which followed Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Ahsoka Tano on their adventures during the Clone Wars. Underworld was not going to follow a main story, but rather was going to tell many different stories featuring different characters throughout its run. Lucasfilm employees who worked on the show during its early stages before it got cancelled have also confirmed that there was going to be at least one episode featuring the origin story of Chancellor Sheev Palpatine, Darth Sidious himself, so we also know that there was going to be at least a few episodes which took place outside of the time gap between episodes 3 and 4. Aside from Palpatine, other story details which have leaked from people who worked on the show include a storyline featuring Boba Fett beginning his career as a bounty hunter, an origin story for Han Solo, a storyline showing how the rebels managed to steal the first Death Star's plans, ideas for a Western-inspired storyline featuring Obi-Wan, a possible storyline involving Order 66 survivor Quinlan Vos, and a possible appearance of Starkiller to tie the series into the Force Unleashed games which were being produced at the same time. We also know from George Lucas himself that, barring flashback episodes such as Palpatine's origin story, Palpatine and Vader were not going to be appearing as characters in the series. He wanted to tell stories which focused on side characters in the Star Wars galaxy, rather than the film's major characters. Most of this information comes from men and women who were hired in 2007 to take part in a writer's room for the series. Roughly 200 writers were brought in to plan it out, and by 2008 these 200 had been whittled down to 6 who were going to be writing the actual episodes. As these writers set about writing the TV show, George Lucas would periodically tell them not to worry about how expensive their ideas would be, and just write what they wanted. Money was not an object. God, I'm salivating at what could have been. Moving right along. Originally, each season of the show was going to be 25 episodes, and each of those episodes was going to be about 50 minutes, but during the writing process, Lucas told the writers to extend the episode count of each season to 50. By 2009, they had scripts for 50 episodes written and completed, and it was reported that Lucasfilm was holding auditions for the series, and it was reported that the series would start filming in 2010. Rick McCallum, who helped produce the prequels and was returning as a producer for the TV show, reported that they would be filming the series in multiple countries all over the world, but to be fair, he also believed at this point that the series was still going to have only 12 to 16 episodes per season, as opposed to 50, so it's unclear how accurate his information was on this topic. However, when 2010 finally rolled around, rather than announce the beginning of the TV series production, George Lucas announced that it had been put on hold due to budget concerns, saying that they would need to wait for filmmaking technology to improve before they could begin working on the series. It's at this point that I need to address one of George Lucas's primary intentions when creating the series. You see, George wasn't just interested in telling new stories in the Star Wars galaxy. He was interested in pushing forward the limits of filmmaking, the same way he did with the original trilogy and with the prequels. He was quoted as saying of this TV series, "It sits on the shelf. We have 50 hours. We are trying to figure out a different way of making movies. We are looking for a different technology that we can use that will make it economically feasible to shoot the show. Right now, it looks like the Star Wars features, but we have to figure out how to make it at about 1/10 of the cost of the features because it's television. We're working toward that, and we continue to work towards that. We will get there at some point. It's just a very difficult process. Obviously, when we do figure this problem out, it will dramatically affect features, because feature films are costing between $250 to $350 million. When we figure this out, they'll be able to make a feature film for $50 million. It was also reported that Lucas wanted, in making Underworld, to find a way to do what would normally cost $20 million for only $1 million. So unlike with the original trilogy and the prequels, where Lucas was looking for filmmaking techniques which would allow him to bring to life characters which never would have worked on screen before, with this TV show, Lucas was trying to revolutionize filmmaking costs, to find a way to do things he had done on the big screen all over again, but for less money while still looking just as good. The problem is, he and his team apparently never found a way to do that. At least not before he sold Lucasfilm. As we all know, Lucas sold his company to Disney in 2012, and Disney has made no secret since then of the fact that they are not at all interested in moving forward with Underworld. To this day, those scripts for almost 50 hours of Star Wars content sit on a shelf somewhere in the deepest recesses of Lucasfilm, guarded by a Rancor, and also a Balrog, and also Gary Busey, to make sure that no intrepid fan ever recovers them and shows them to the world. That has not, of course, stopped them from recycling the script's ideas. You will recall that I said that ideas discussed for the series included a story of how the rebels stole the first Death Star's plans, and a Han Solo origin story, which to me just tells me that the only Star Wars movie Disney ever produced that weren't absolutely terrible were the ones which were based on stories that George Lucas and a team of writers had already worked on years before. It kind of proves why Disney should have just kept making the stories George Lucas started. Maybe they'll think of that the next time they're deciding whether or not they want to throw his sequel trilogy treatments in the trash. On a side note to that, I've also read interviews with Cory Barlog, the main architect behind the God of War franchise, who said that he was one of the 200 writers invited to work on the series in its very early stages, and he had a lot to say specifically about the Palpatine origin story I mentioned earlier. Quote, "They made the Emperor a sympathetic figure who was wronged by this heartless woman. She's this hardcore gangster, and she just totally destroyed him as a person. I almost cried while reading this. This is the Emperor, the lightning out of the fingers Emperor. That's something magical." You know what else Cory Barlog had to say about that particular script? That it is what inspired him to write the 2018 God of War game. Yeah, that one. The one that everybody agrees is one of the greatest video game stories of all time. That was inspired by this. That is what we're missing out on. I'm just so sad, man. I want to see this TV show. I remember when Star Wars was good. Do you remember when Star Wars was good? Am I just a crazy person? Have I been Berenstein-Baird into thinking Star Wars was good? Am I just a crazy person locked in an insane asylum, bashing my head against the wall, raving about the adventures of Luke Skywalker, while my caretakers study me to try to figure out what it was which drove me even to believing that Star Wars was good? Is my whole life a lie? Anyway, there are a few more conflicting reports about why the series never got off the ground while Lucas was still in charge, with the main one being that in addition to its astronomically high budget, seriously, Rick McCallum just gave an interview in this year, the year of our Lord 2025, that the entire series would have cost $2 billion to produce. George Lucas was also halted from producing the series because he didn't get any networks to commit to a 5-season deal. Lucas wanted the TV show to be 200 episodes in total, and he would only make a deal with a TV network if they would agree up front to air all 200 episodes, and no one was willing to agree to that, which, honestly, really makes me wish Lucas could get a chance to try again today. I mean, hell, Amazon agreed to produce 5 seasons of The Rings of Power before a single second of film had been shot, so I think Lucas would have had a real shot getting it off the ground today. It's really just the most unfortunate timing in the world. Our man was literally 10 years too early. If he would have just given it some time, he could have gotten Amazon to commit hook, line, and sinker to this thing. We were right there, man. Anyway, that's it. That's all. I'm starting to depress myself. Star Wars Underworld was, by all accounts, a show which would have been revolutionary for the Star Wars brand. It directly inspired the only 2 Disney movies that people don't actively hate, and it directly inspired one of the most beloved video games of all time. Not to mention, Lucas wanted it to be 200 episodes at 50 episodes each. That would have been almost 200 hours of George Lucas Star Wars content, which I am all the way game for. But that's not how things shook out. Which is unfortunate, but there's really nothing you can do. I don't think there's a snowball's chance Disney is going to do anything with the Underworld scripts that they already have. They're kind of losing money hand over fist on Star Wars as it is, so they would never commit to spending that much money on it. And even if they had the money and success to justify it, they would never commit to producing a George Lucas Star Wars project at all. They're too busy making actual bangers like the Book of Bob Fett and The Alcoholic, which, let's be honest, are the real moneymakers in this franchise. I mean, if it were up to me, I would definitely tell them to release the series. If I had a monkey's paw, that would be all of my wishes. I'd use up the whole hand to get this series. I would literally allow everyone at Disney Lucasfilm to get together, read the scripts, decide which one they thought is the absolute worst one of the bunch, make that, and I would still take that over everything that has been produced by Disney Star Wars up until now. And it's just really unfortunate I'm never going to get that chance. It's really unfortunate that the world is never going to get that chance. But like I said, what can you do? Thank you so much for watching this video, and especially so if you stayed to the end. I hope you found it to be a favorable experience.